Oh, Craig Fouie, Colin Harmon here, talking about Kyler Murray. The Cardinals making the decision the week before the new league year starts they're going to release him. They're going to let him go after 7 seasons.
It was what we've all expected and kind of been waiting for a long time at this
Right.
point. It was just a long and winding and
Doesn't matter
eventful
when.
journey
Doesn't matter when.
to get to this point.
Adam Schefter sending out yesterday afternoon. Clearly, Kyler's done with the Cardinals. They're going to let him know, release him, unless they can find a trade partner between now and next Wednesday. It's possible.
I'm a bit surprised that there weren't any takers at all, specifically, not even from I'm not even talking about getting draft assets in return, just to offload the contract.
Right.
Like that's the only thing I would be trying to do if I were the Cardinals. And I think there's got to be enough quarterback needy teams out there. It's a really bad draft class for quarterbacks.
Bad free agency class.
Exactly. And you look at, maybe teams out there that can look in the mirror and say, yeah, Kyler in free agency is probably not going to choose us. Mm-hmm. But here at this point, a pretty friendly contract, 2-year contract for the next team that takes it on, to get a guy that can be better than 99% of the available options out there.
Here's the option for teams, though, with Kyler. If they let the Cardinals release him, they can pick him up next year for the league minimum, because the Cardinals are footing the bill for that $36.8 million, right? So if I'm the Vikings, all I have to pay him is $1.3 million, and that offsets what the Cardinals pay him. So I get a quarterback for a year. I don't have to settle on a future contract next year. I can tell him we're going to do that. We can negotiate something, but for next year, I pay $1.3 million.
And the Cardinals 100%. Pick up the tab. I'm the Vikings, yes.
Right.
If I'm probably maybe even the Steelers, yes.
Right.
I'm talking about if I'm the Jets,
the Jets
or the Browns.
Right. The Browns already have 5 quarterbacks.
Kyler's not choosing those guys, I would think, in free agency. So those are the teams I'm speaking of specifically.
Yeah.
The Cardinals now are going to have to eat $54 million in dead cap money. If they were able to offload that, it'd be just under $18 million, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
They'll be absorbing Kyler's cap hit primarily this coming year.
Because they release him now, though, they missed that 2027 $19.5 million.
Yes.
So they don't have to pay that one to him. But the cap hit is tough. But you know what? Like the Broncos did a couple years ago with Russ Wilson, they're just going to bite it, like the Miami Dolphins with Tua. They're just going to eat it and say, here we go. We're moving on.
It had gotten to that point. We've talked about it at length. Me personally, I didn't think there was any way you could put all the genie back in the bottle, so to speak, of what had all happened here.
Right.
And how many years do you need to see it?
I know, right?
We've gone through 7 years. The last 5 have been injury riddled. And here's a guy whose greatest strength is his mobility.
Yep.
Well, when you've been that injured and you're getting older, you're very much a depreciating asset at this point, where his best years are behind them for what he does specifically. He's not going to just morph in at age 30 something and become all of a sudden a pocket passer that can.
He's not going to be that.
He can't do it.
He's not going to be that. He'll be 29 in August, right? So he still feels like his response, by the way, yesterday on social media, I thought was awesome.
Perfect.
He just said, to everyone that supported me and showed kindness to my family and me during my time in Arizona, bottom of my heart, thank you. But this is the great paragraph. I wanted nothing more to be the one to end the 77-year drought for this organization. I'm sorry I failed us. And I'm like, talk about a dig.
Yep.
Right. It's like, here you go.
One last twist in the knife to Michael Bidwell on his way out the door.
Exactly. And then the 2022 contract, when the Cardinals want to insert the study clause, he says in the 3rd paragraph, I am no stranger to adversity. I'm prepared for whatever. I trust in God and my work ethic. I love that. I was like, you know what, Kyler, you got a couple digs in there.
Well played. Yeah, it's well played on the way out the door.
Well played on the way out. Very smart, very concise. And I thought he got his digs in, because people I talked to when this all came out said, man, Kyler put 77-year drought in there. It's like, absolutely.
Nobody's been able to win here. Let me make that very clear. This isn't a Kyler problem, but at the same time, I know everyone's been a polarizing topic basically since
7 years,
since day one,
since the draft. Bosa or Murray?
I've never been in the. I feel like I've been very split in the. I'm not in the pro Kyler camp. I'm also not in the Kyler is the absolute worst camp. Like, he at his best was pushing a top 10 quarterback in the NFL.
I absolutely agree.
I think at worst he was still like a top 15 quarterback in the NFL, but it wasn't working here.
No,
to be the face of the franchise and lead a futile franchise, as he said, for 77 years at this point.
Yeah.
He just wasn't that guy. And we've talked about for years the leadership qualities, and that's been called into question by his own teammates.
Owning the locker room. Yeah.
You got to be that guy. You're being paid to be that guy. It never worked out that way.
Right.
There were some highs from Kyler for sure. There were a lot of lows and there was a lot of drama in between. It had reached a point where, again, he's not getting younger. His legs aren't getting better. He's not becoming healthier. You need to just rip the Band-Aid off. He's gone through 2 head coaches, 2 very different offensive schemes.
Yep.
And it hasn't worked at either point.
He was a 2-time Pro Bowl quarterback under Cliff, right? 20 and 21, back-to-back Pro Bowl selections for Kyler. He played very well. He led them through that 10-0 start in 21 when they went to the playoffs and got demoralized by the Rams over at SoFi Stadium. He had his moments, right? The opening game up in Las Vegas when he had the 2-point conversion that he ran around for 2 minutes and finally scored, and then won the game for the Cardinals. I mean,
he had one like that against the Rams more recently.
Yeah, he did. He had his moments, and that's the thing about Kyler. That's what he was coming in, what he has been since he was in junior high school, college, and now here. That's the guy he's been. And the Cardinals were not able to really pull that out of him or extract the best of Kyler on a consistent basis.
That's the thing. The highs were high, but it was not consistent enough to be that guy to lead a franchise that needs a really sturdy guy to lead it, because the rest of the parts aren't there. So there's a defense of Kyler. You can't put you're being paid to be that guy.
Yes.
And Kyler wasn't that guy, and that's why he's not here anymore, because the rest of the team around him wasn't sturdy enough to carry a lot of spare parts for a long time.
There's a big issue here, a big umbrella of this, and before we move on to who's coming next, that when Cliff was here, Cliff was hired to be the guy to take Kyler into the NFL. Right? Cliff was the spread. He was the guy that was going to get Kyler because of what Kyler's skill set was. And so Cliff came in. And then what happened with Cliff? He got nothing but pressure from the media and local fans about, you can't run this offense in the NFL. It doesn't work. It doesn't work, right? And so when you look at the spread offense and what he brought to the table, everybody kept pressuring and pressuring and pressuring. But Kyler flourished initially in that system once they got their feet together, got kind of meshed. And then it kind of fell apart because Cliff couldn't finish the season strong, right? So it was Cliff got pressure. Well, then they got rid of Cliff, right?
Before we move on to moving on from Cliff, I don't think it's just immediate. It was Kyler specifically. Remember that Thursday night game against the New Orleans Saints where he undressed Cliff on national TV?
On a timeout. Yeah. Calm the F down. Yeah. But I'm saying
that felt like kind of the beginning of the end of the Cliff era.
That unraveled, and that was in 22? One or two. Yeah. But Cliff was under pressure because everybody, that offense doesn't work here. You got to go back to a pro offense. Well, that's not Kyler. So then they got rid of Cliff, brought in Jonathan Gannon and Drew Petzing, and that went
very
right back
in a pro offense.
Back to, I need a 6'4", 240-pound quarterback to stand in the pocket, get under center. And again, the media pressure and all this stuff, the fans, because the more they hear it, the more they believe it. And we got to go pro offense. And what did Drew Petzing's offense look like with Jacoby Brissett? Better. They still didn't win, but it looked more like Drew Petzing's offense. He didn't have that in Kyler, and they just couldn't find a scheme to fit Kyler's personality. So maybe the Vikings have that. Maybe they have a coach there that says
Kevin O'Connell's an offensive mastermind.
He is, and
they've got Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. They've got a lot of pieces. They got a great defense. They're a team that's built that you just need a plug and play quarterback.
Correct. And if they decide to go,
a great situation.
And if they decide to go with Kyler, then they've given up on JJ McCarthy and said he's not our guy, and we're going with Kyler because Kyler's not a backup quarterback.
I gave up on JJ McCarthy the second they drafted him. That was that's a different discussion.
But so that's where, I mean, to me, it just was this huge issue with Kyler where his skill set said he has to play this particular way. And he just never was allowed to do that later with clearly with this coaching staff, the most recent.
There was big time locker room guys going back to Fitz.
Oh yeah.
Kelvin Beachum was pretty outspoken about it, about Kyler's leadership qualities.
Yep.
And even more recently, along the lines of the Jacoby Brissett thing, just kind of the difference between the quarterbacks. Correct. Paris Johnson Jr.'s comments in the locker room.
Yeah.
It's easy to fight for a guy when he's standing in the pocket, delivering, taking hits to deliver the football.
Correct.
That was like,
okay. Telling
that it was, you could read between the lines of
that
Jacoby versus Kyler right there.
And again, that goes back to the scheme and what you're trying to do. And Jacoby's the big dude, right? He's 250 pounds and 6'4", and he stands in there and takes hits. But again, I don't think it's all on Kyler. I don't think it's all on the Cardinals. I don't think it's all on his teammates. This last year was an abysmal year with injuries and no running backs and wide receivers, and the defense was terrible. So I think there's a whole lot going, and leadership clearly was a big issue because Kyler came right out of college, 1 year starter at Oklahoma, 1 year, right, following Baker Mayfield, and then he got the keys to the limousine here, the keys to the Cadillac, and he wasn't ready. He was young and immature.
And it's an organization, again, that's just not propped up to help those types of guys succeed basically on their own.
Correct. And that's what
you
they
need
did.
to carry us.
Yeah.
Because we need somebody. Because
and Cliff came in as a rookie. He'd never been a head coach in the NFL either, or ever coached a down in the NFL at any position. So you had a rookie head coach, a rookie quarterback coming in, and it had its moments. And that's the thing. When as you said, and I agree with you, when Kyler's at his best, top 10. When he's at his worst, still top 15. What's the most important position in all of sports? Quarterback, right? I think everybody agrees with that. And yet so many teams can't seem to find one.
The lifespan had just run out.
Yeah.
They ran out of tarmac, like it was over.
So now now
7 years, one playoff appearance,
Yes.
and as you said, it was a non-competitive blowout from them.
I mean, and they were banged up that year too. It was awful though. Kyler was running
38, 48-1 as a starter for the Cardinals.
Yeah.
Like,
there you go.
How much more of a sample size do we need here of this?
I will say this, that's better than the Cardinals' overall record historically.
Again, goes back to Kyler's 77 years thing. You guys got a lot more issues than
exactly.
me.
So now here you are, the Arizona Cardinals. You're eating that. You've decided to eat that money. Where do you go from here? Is Jacoby Brissett the guy, or everybody's talking about Malik Willis?
Suddenly. Oh, please no.
Malik Willis has become
no.
this guy that's going to get 40-50 million in free agency, and he's not played all that much.
You remember the Matt Flynn scenario?
Yes.
He had the fill-in for the Packers for, I believe, a couple games, and ends up getting a massive contract, either the Raiders or the Seahawks. I can't remember. He kind of had he had it twice, where he basically, it didn't work in that first place. Then he goes somewhere else and has like 2 good games again, and someone else bites and pays a big contract to him again.
Yeah.
Malik Willis reminds me of that situation. Like, no, thank you.
I know, but everybody's
no interest.
But everybody's clamoring for Malik Willis now. Like, not just here locally, not just local media, not just fans, but nationally. Malik Willis is at the top of the heap in free agent quarterbacks. It's crazy. He's a backup in Green. If you don't know, he's a backup in Green Bay to Jordan Love.
He looked good when he filled in for Jordan Love. But again, it goes back to
2 out of 5 games. He looked really good. He didn't look so good in 3 games.
Unless that's something where Monty and specifically Mike LaFleur be like, that is the guy that I can unlock, and I'm 100% certain that I can do that.
Right.
But again, you're paying. He's way overvalued, in my opinion, in the market right now.
See, Monty Ossenfort, the Cardinals GM, was in Tennessee when they drafted Malik Willis. So there's some sort of, Monty was on that staff. He wasn't the GM. He was an assistant something. But he was on that staff when they drafted him. So they saw something. So Monty has that. Oh, yeah, I remember what we looked at and what we saw in Malik. But it didn't work out in Tennessee for Malik Willis. He ends up as a backup in Green Bay. And now everybody's clamoring for Malik Willis in the free agent market.
See, you have Jacoby Brissett still with 1 year remaining on his contract.
Correct. You got him.
He played absolutely well enough to keep you competitive.
You couldn't win, but he did.
He kept you competitive.
That's correct.
And he was not the reason they were losing football games.
No.
He certainly showed he was not the reason that because they didn't win any games. But I think you've got a team that's got a lot of holes. Whether they want to admit that or not.
Right.
They can try to say we're close and we lost a lot of competitive games. But they were 3-14. They've got the number 3 overall pick. Their offensive line was abysmal last year. And we'll get to that in a second.
Yes.
I'm keeping Jacoby for 1 year. He's our guy.
I agree.
And it's a 1 year bridge, and you're not going to call it a tank season, but in that division, every team's a Super Bowl contender.
Right.
You're not going to be competitive in year 1 without a real quarterback solution. Their offensive line absolutely needs to be addressed. So I'm not drafting a quarterback 3rd overall. I'm not drafting a quarterback in the 1st round, even if I trade back.
That's the latest rumor, right? The Cardinals still pick their defensive edge guy or offensive lineman at number 3, and then they try to trade back into the lower 1st round and take Ty Simpson out of Alabama. That's the latest.
If you want to try to do a quarterback early in round 2, I'm fine with that. But you cannot do this early in round 1. And I don't want to hear anything about Jeremiah Love and drafting a running back 3rd overall either.
He's generational.
And I don't think that they would do that. Monty has talked, and that's another argument about.
Right.
We thought he should have been gone with Jonathan Gannon because he was the architect of all of this.
Correct.
But still, his mantra has been building from the inside out.
Right.
And now his draft picks haven't necessarily hit in that regard, but that has been his game plan.
Yeah.
And we all know they need offensive line help badly. So to me, I'm using this year as a tank year.
Yeah.
You can call it whatever you want,
Well,
but in that division, you're not going to be competitive.
Colin, Vegas has them at 4.5 wins. Come on. I mean,
and you now position yourself. You fortify your offensive line through this draft.
You have to, Monty. You have to.
And you position yourself
or free agency.
But you position yourself to draft a quarterback probably with a top 2 pick next year.
Right.
And you hope that the 2027 draft class ends up being what everyone went into this past year thinking the 2026 draft class would be.
Yeah.
And that didn't pan out with those guys.
Yeah.
But I'm not taking flyers on Malik Willis because they're just not there as an organization right now. They've got so many holes.
But there's a lot of talk already generated nationally about Malik Willis and what a great I've got a list here of the top quarterbacks available. Malik Willis is at the top of the list above Aaron Rodgers and then Kyler Murray in terms of quarterbacks available. That's how crazy this has become. And that's what the media does, right? Once the combine hits and you start getting into free agency, suddenly the media, national media, local media start generating, they just throw names out and suddenly it gets traction, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, that's the guy we want. That's the guy we need. And it's like, just let the situation play out, see what happens. But I don't think anybody in their right mind is going to think the Cardinals are going to win the division and go to the playoffs next year. And that's not happening.
So do you want to get into should we get into the grade stuff?
Yeah. Yes. Let's do that.
I think
let's do that
with the offensive line. That's important.
Yes, it is.
They lost Clayton Adams, and we all talked about that ad nauseum last year of what a difference that made in the offensive line play, in the running back room, just their overall efficiency on that part of the offensive side of the football. He's back.
I was looking for it just to find my grades here. All right.
So he's back.
Yes.
The defensive coordinator, Nick Rawlis, who got
C-
from his own players, was held back.
Oh, wait, C+.
C+, okay.
C+, yeah. And I've got to
Knew it was a C.
C-.
He was also retained.
Yes, he was.
So it's just interesting. The worst grades and the worst things that they did last year were the parts that were kept. And we got rid of everything else.
So the NFL won in I guess negotiations or whatever, arbitration against the NFLP that they shouldn't be allowed to release their grade, the report cards that the players do for each team.
What a shame. That was.
But with almost over 2,000 players, like somehow it got leaked, And so the Cardinals end up 31st overall. Last year they were 32nd, so they got one notch up. They 31 out of 32. Treatment of families D+, home game field B, food and dining areas C-, nutritionist dietitian B, locker room F-, training room D+, training staff B-, weight room D+, strength coaches B-, position coaches B+, offensive coordinator B-, defensive coordinator Nick Rawlis C+, special teams coordinator Jeff Rogers B, team travel C+, head coach B+, general manager B, team ownership F.
Michael Bidwell, the only owner in the NFL to get an F, and he got downgraded from the previous years.
Where's the D-?
Yeah.
So I mean, that's what the players think of the facility, of the situation, and that's a shame. And I like these report cards.
I love it
because it gives you a look at the entire NFL, right? And it tells you what the players think. And so when you're out there in free agency, what we just talked about, and you're trying to fortify this team, players look at this
100%.
And do I want to go there? Probably not. They better pay me a boatload of money or I'm not going to go. And now there's a promise of a new facility in 2028. So we still have 2.5 years to deal with this facility in Tempe. The ownership's not
at the
changing.
rate that the Cardinals are firing and hiring new coaches.
Oh, who knows?
No one's going to be around in 2028.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, Kyler said that when we brought up in mid-October, I guess, when they announced the new facility. He goes, I don't think I'll be here to enjoy it, but it looks really nice. He was right.
Said, I hope I'm here to enjoy it.
I hope. Yeah, he was right. I mean, he's not. Jonathan Gannon, same kind of thing. Looks really nice. We'll see.
But again, you look at offensive line, the defensive coordinator, and they're both brought back, and they're the lowest graded.
Yeah,
coming out of there. Yeah. Monty gets to B. Which is, I guess, reassuring to some level. And they brought back a bunch of those staff members off of last year's staff, not just Nick Rawlis, but there's a bunch of other guys that are back on this staff moving forward. I like Mike LaFleur. I honestly think he's got energy. He's exciting. He's more like a Sean McVay kind of guy at the podium talking to people. He's got that upbeat attitude, something that Jonathan Gannon didn't seem to have in front of the media. Although the players say he was fiery, I just never saw it. Well, just the limited things we've heard from Mike LaFleur. There's just a little more detail that's explained. There's just a lot of vague generalities
with that whole staff.
With Jonathan Gannon, where it's just, specifically even with the injury stuff, like, okay, this is ridiculous. Like, this guy's been out for over a year and we can't even get it. So, we talked about it too. If they were going with a first-time head coach again, if they don't want to pay the big bucks for a proven head coach, you need somebody in this era of the NFL with offensive upside. And when you can pluck from the Kyle Shanahan tree and the Sean McVay tree, that's the best trees to be plucking from when you're looking for an offensive mind. So we'll see how that works out. Because there's a lot of holes to fill. And the biggest of them is to figure out the quarterback of the future. And they've been trying to do that now for 2 years.
And I mentioned Ty Simpson earlier out of Alabama. I don't think you'd even have to move up to get him, because you still have a top 2 to 3 pick in the second round. So I don't know if you'd even have to move.
I'd be okay with taking a flyer on Ty Simpson early in the second round.
He's had 15 starts. That's not a lot. Kyler Murray had about the same, 12, 14 starts, because he had 1 year at Oklahoma. They went into the playoffs. So it's not a lot. It's not a big body of work, right? Where Fernando Mendoza has 35 collegiate starts. That's a big difference between 35 and 15 in terms of experience. But if you take a flyer in the second round on a Ty Simpson, go ahead.
To me, like, looking ahead even to next year's draft, though, unless there's a big jump up, like, I'm not a big Dante Moore guy at all.
You're going back to a Kyler Moore kind of a guy, or Kyler Murray, excuse me.
Arch will be coming out at that point, but like, still haven't seen anything except for, media hype and fan hype, but there's no.
He got better at the end of the season,
but there's not been huge substance behind Arch to this point. You look at all the Garrett Nussmeier, who's coming out this year. He was supposed to be at one point
the guy,
a top 10, top 5 pick. Not going to happen. He got benched at the end of the year at LSU. There's a lot of names of, this is a loaded draft coming into this year, and literally all of those guys played well below average, or at least below expectation. And now you're left with this draft class of, the Raiders are taking Fernando Mendoza because that's like the only option available. And good luck to everybody else figuring out who your next quarterback is. So that's why I'm not trying to find a quarterback.
Not yet. And there's a lot more to this conversation, obviously, because now we have the new league year starts next Wednesday, and then free agency gets cranked up with the tampering period and all that stuff. They can start signing guys. Then the draft comes up in late April. So we'll stay on top of it here. Get the ABC 15 app. You can you can follow us there and see what's going on. Of course, on ABC 15, we'll have plenty to talk about, but it's far from over. It's far from over. And clearly we just found out too that the Cardinals will play in the Hall of Fame game in Canton the same weekend that Larry Fitzgerald is inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So
makes sense. Panthers, Luke Kuechly going in. So
it's pretty cool. We'll see what happens, but there's a lot more ahead. Don't panic yet. Don't start celebrating yet, because again, as I said earlier, Vegas has the Cardinals at 4.5 wins next year in a division that includes the Seahawks, the Rams, and the 49ers.
It was just a Band-Aid of an era that just needed to be ripped off. And now they can start to move in a different direction.